Guys, something I have never been into. I've never really been into gossip. I hate small talk, and I hate redundant conversation. For the most part, if I have nothing to say, I pretty much stay silent. But you always get those people that think you're upset because you're not talking, unless they know you very well. This is probably one reason I failed miserably as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, because if you're not talking, they figure something's wrong. But the thing is, you take away any of those things. You take away gossip, you take away the small talk, and you take away redundant conversation, and Jehovah's Witnesses have nothing to talk about except the meetings. And of course, the occasional sister who is disfellowshipped for having immoral sex with lesbian midgets. I hated the phony compliments at the Kingdom Hall. It never failed. Every time I went to the Kingdom Hall, I would hear, "That's a nice tie, brother." After a while, that's all they can compliment is your tie. Nothing else, just the tie. I mentioned it to one JW, and I says, normal people just don't talk like this. And he says to me, "They do in the truth." And again I said, normal people just don't talk like this. Anyways, being a JW isn't all fun and games, so let's get to it. In my lifetime, I've seen companies come and I've seen companies go. And what happens to the companies that do very well? They stop popping up all over the place. They may start out regional, but expand nationwide, and some of them actually go international. Other companies don't do so well. Some are either bested by their competitors, or they simply outlive their time. But what do? They don't continue growing. No. They kind of consolidate. They make things smaller. They may lay off some of their employees. They may close some locations. But they make themselves smaller and more manageable. This is what's been happening to Watchtower over the last few years, and yet they're continually telling you how they're growing, or up until recently. This is actually the first year that Watchtower admitted that they're on the decline. But they will blame COVID for that too, much like everybody else is. But look in past years, prior to 2020, prior to COVID, what was going on? When you were looking at your halls and noticing fewer and fewer people there, your attendance was getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Then you find out that your Kingdom Hall is being closed. You're not told why, but you have to move to another hall maybe 2 hours away. Why? Because you're expanding? That's exactly what you were told. And that's exactly what many of you believed. If you remember back in the day, what would happen? They never let congregations get much more over 100 publishers. But when it did expand, what would they do? They would split the congregation off and start another congregation somewhere else, and in many cases build a new Kingdom Hall. But that hasn't been the case in recent years. No, because they've been getting smaller. They don't need the Kingdom Halls they once did. Yet they're still hitting you up for donations because they need new Kingdom Halls. Well, they buffaloed you for a few years, but it's obvious today now you have your Zoom meetings that no, they don't need those Kingdom Halls. Yet they're still hitting you up for donations. And you're gladly sending them. If anything, 2020 should have been a wake-up call for many people. Not just Jehovah's Witnesses, but everybody. Things are getting tighter, and things are not going to get better like a lot of people are hoping. And Jehovah's Witnesses, if anybody, you should realize that things are not going to get better. Yet you still insist on sending donations to Watchtower. And for what? To build new halls? Consider what's going on in Russia right now, and has been going on for a few years. Do you really think Watchtower really cares what's happening to Jehovah's Witnesses in Russia? Their main concern is the property that was seized by the Russian Federation. So what did Watchtower do? They went crying to the UN. They went crying to the European Union. They didn't go to their God for help. No, they went to other men for help. Now consider if you were going through a financial hardship. What would happen if you were to go to Watchtower and ask them for a financial handout or help in any way? Do you think you'd get it? No. But whenever they need more money to pay off lawsuits or build another production facility, who do they hit up for money? They hit you up for money. But turn that around. Look at how you're living. Now, a lot of people have struggled this past year. I know a lot of people who have really been hurt by 2020. I was one of the few that really didn't suffer. I've actually done pretty well this past year, but most people have not. And my situation could turn around in a heartbeat. Your situation, if you're doing pretty well, could turn around in a heartbeat. But do you think Watchtower would be there for you? What would they tell you? What would the elders tell you if you ever needed their financial help? What they would do? They'd tell you to pray on it. Okay, when Watchtower needs help, why don't they pray on it? Why do they hit you up for money? Did it ever dawn on you, Jehovah's Witnesses, that you do not need Watchtower? Without you, there would be no Watchtower. See, they need you. You don't need them. Many of you struggle. Many of you have a very difficult time trying to make ends meet. You're living paycheck to paycheck to paycheck. Now turn it around to your leaders in Warwick. Look at your governing body. These are men so out of touch with what the regular man is going through. They're living like kings, and you continue to support them. You continue to send them everything. And they use that poor widow who dropped in 2 coins of very little value as a means to coerce you into sending everything you've got. Let's go back a few decades. My last video, I talked about the 1975 fiasco. Many of Jehovah's Witnesses lost everything because of that, because Watchtower coerced them into donating everything they had. Many spent their life savings. Many sold their property, sent everything to Watchtower. Now, after that disaster, and Armageddon didn't come in 1975, did Watchtower reimburse any of those Jehovah's Witnesses? No. Many of them went to their graves with nothing. Many of them lost their retirement. They were not reimbursed by Watchtower then, and if anything were to happen now, Watchtower will not reimburse you. See, everything you donate now stays with Watchtower. The boys in Warwick, regardless what kind of smoke they're blowing up your dress, don't really care about you whatsoever. All you are dollar signs to them. There's a reason why the boys in Warwick tell you that the internet is Satan's tool. All of a sudden now they want the internet for their purpose. There was a reason why they told you to stay off of it. See, now if the internet was around in 1975, the 1975 fiasco would not have happened the way it did. Why? Because now the information is at a touch of a button. See, when I first became one of Jehovah's Witnesses, I was very computer illiterate. I was self-taught in recent years. The research I've done in recent years was research I should have done way back in the late 90s, early 2000s. But I didn't because I didn't have a computer and I didn't know the first thing about them. If you're wondering why the attendance at your meetings were getting smaller prior to the Zoom meetings, it's because of the information on the internet. And this is why Watchtower tells you to stay off the internet, because they know the information's out there. It was about 2014 when I started digging up this information about Watchtower, things that I didn't have a clue about. At this time, I was already fading, but my suspicions were correct about it when I was starting to find out this information. This is why they tell you they will do the research for you. What is the purpose in having a brain if you allow an outside entity to do the research for you? Because they want to tell you what to know. They don't want you to do it on your own. Wake up, Jehovah's Witnesses. There's not much time left. See, Watchtower is painting themselves into a corner, and they've pretty much done it already, but many of you are going out of your way to defend this organization, an organization that certainly wouldn't defend you if roles were reversed. They don't care about you. They didn't care about any of us. Just consider one thing. Without you, there would be no Watchtower. See, Watchtower, jw.org, needed Jehovah's Witnesses. But it's getting to the point where they're not going to need you anymore. And they have already pretty much cut you off. Before you lose everything, take a step back and look at the entire picture. Do your own research on this organization. This is not a loving organization. This is a corporation. And if this was God's true organization, it would not be going through what it's going through now, regardless of whether they're being attacked by Satan or not. If the Almighty wanted this organization here, and if he wanted it to expand, it most certainly would be expanding. But watching Watchtower comply to man-made doctrines tells me full well that it is not God's organization, because they're one of the few religions that are complying. Give that a thought, Jehovah's Witnesses. Anyways, guys, I'd appreciate your thoughts, and I will talk to you soon. You guys have a good day.